enlisted in MacDill. Who wouldn't be? So I enlisted at Langley in 40, and I was there 4 months, and the 29th group, I was 43rd Bomb Squadron, we came down here. And I remember getting off of the train at night and getting up on the trucks. And there was a full troop train. I don't know how many trucks carried us fellows. You could get 12, but comfortably 10 in a truck. And the Bayshore Drive angles around, and although I was in the front of the line with the trucks and fortunately sitting facing the bay, and I saw the lights on the bay and the beautiful lights and the reflections, and you got a glimpse of some of the homes and the foliage and things. Oh, I was sold. But there was a big line of cars that followed the convoy coming out here. We got to the base, it was dark. And looking out of the truck, I saw the ground and the wheels plowing through the sand. I thought, oh my God, look at all that mud. I hate mud. And when I jumped off the truck, lo and behold, it was sand. I was so happy. Yeah. And I got into the barracks, and it was all new. The old barracks at Langley Field, they were kind of run down, not that much, but it wasn't anything new, but this was brand new, and everything in it was new, and I was so pleased with that. Although in my time, my life for that, we could never afford new, but we liked new anyway, and so I was very pleased to see that. They said, well, go in and get a bunk, and there was no rush. We all just in our time, and I got a bunk downstairs. I liked that. I didn't want to be upstairs. I don't know why. I didn't want to jump out of the window in case of fire or something, but I was pleased to get on the bottom floor. Well, we got unloaded, and we had a foot locker and a bunk and a wall locker, and what little we had, we put where it was supposed to go. Then later, we got a full complement of things. I don't know why they didn't give us that. All that stuff that we got at MacDill, they could have given us up at Langley. I don't know why, but we got all the stuff for a full foot locker. And they gave us a card that you put in the inside of the top of the foot locker. They showed you exactly how your socks went here and everything, and you had to have it laid out. But that didn't bother me. That pleased me. And then we had a wall locker. And there weren't so many of us that we weren't sleeping head to tail like we were close. There was plenty of room between the bunks, so everybody slept with their head against the wall. And we had our own shower. Oh, yeah, I liked it very much. Well, we didn't get into the work of the. I didn't know what I was going to do. Some of the guys were doing certain works involving the airplane at Langley. They knew when they got to the flight line. But those newcomers like myself, we were still waiting for people to tell us, well, go over there and take that rag and wipe those parts and do that. So, well, I didn't know what we were going to do here at Langley, but it was very similar eventually, as I found. It was just like what we were doing in Langley. I spent a lot of time cleaning cowling parts, I remember, and that was all right with me. I had no premonition or no thought about what I might expect to be able to do, and so I cleaned a lot of that, and I did it for months, and a couple of months I suppose, and I did KP and guard duty, and we were talking about. Don't know why we did guard duty. We had a belt and a holster with a 45 in it. Didn't have any ammunition in it. And I don't know if I ever looked, but I just, from this point, I think it probably wasn't. There was the son of General Tinker would show up when we were doing guard duty and throw rocks at us. Little pebbles, little rocks. And I asked the other guys, I said, has that kid been throwing rocks? Yeah, and we didn't know who he was at the time, but that was kind of a curious thing. And I spent probably 3 months washing cowlings, and one day they came to me and said, would you like to take an airplane ride? I had visions of a big B-17. Oh, yeah. Well, they said, you report over there to a parachute thing, and they'll give you a chute, and there'll be a guy by there, and he'll pick you up, and you'll go for a ride. And I thought, well, that's a nice big airplane. And it turned out the guy who picked me up to take me for a ride was Major Old. We called him Olds. And he took me down past the B-17, and I thought we were going there, and he took me to a little primary trainer. So my first airplane ride was in a primary trainer. Well, I got in the plane, and he said to me, why did you do that? And I didn't know what he was talking about. I'll get off of this personal stuff. Well, I picked the chute up and put it in the cockpit before I got in. And I didn't know that was the proper way to do it. That's the way you did it. You didn't try to climb up to the airport with that big thing banging on your legs. So then we got to flying, and he said, just put your feet lightly on the rudder pedals and grab the control stick, and don't hinder any movement of it, and just flow through with me. And we did that. I'm just following it all, and he said, you want to fly? I said, well, I'll try it. Well, I remember. And I did all that. And we flew around, and he said, would you like to land it? I said, no. We got on the ground. He said, why didn't you want to land the airplane? I said, that's the first airplane ride I had. And it was. And he was flabbergasted. From that point on, I was finished cleaning cowlings. I was assigned to training I was assigned to the armament department, but I didn't know it would lead to bombing training. But from that, my whole life changed, and I don't know why I flew that airplane to this day. I don't understand it, but I was in the groove, as you might say, and I haven't talked about that to any group. I told you about it, but I don't know what that was about, people, I swear. I flew that airplane. I knew what a snap roll was. You got so far and you kicked the rudder and you snapped it around. And I learned that in watching him, and I knew what he did. They called it an emblem. I didn't know what that was, but I did it. And where did I get that? But anyway, that was the beginning of my life change here in McDill. I got assigned with different people to fly, and I qualified as a master bombardier. That was, your rating was dependent upon your circular error. The lower your circular error was as bombs were dropped. There was a bombardier rating, and then there was a master bombardier rating. And I think we dropped 20 bombs. We'd load those at a time, and you could pick your best 5 shots at different altitudes to qualify, and I did. And so that almost brings me up to date, and I spent those years, we flew out of Drew because their field wasn't finished, the runways, and we took the trucks over to Drew. Most of the airplanes we flew were B-18s, A's, and that was a good airplane, and I enjoyed flying in that, bombing in it. In the evening, sometimes one of the pilots, the word would be out that we were going to fly around, and sometimes it was a 17, more often a B-18, and we'd load that up. I say that like we were in charge. I was only flying, and I did get flying pay. But a lot of guys would sandbag along to pick up extra hours to get their full 4 hours, because they wouldn't pay you 50% of your base pay for flying on flying pay. So you'd scramble to get it in, because they didn't have a lot of extra money for extra flights. But that was done, I think, principally to help guys get caught up, because you could lose your 50% of your base pay for a month if you didn't have 30 minutes or less. So that's why. But flying around in the evening with these cumulus building, going in among them, and oh, it was beautiful. Yeah, I enjoyed flying, and I may be rushing through this, but we're getting close to when the draftees came in early '41. We started having the first draftees, and some of those kids, I remember them coming in staggering drunk. So many of them had to go out and get loaded just because they were now Army, and we yelled at them, and it was. But so we finished up the year, and then here came Pearl Harbor, and I was waiting in a car outside of a Catholic church. I was dating a girl from Clearwater, and she came out and she said, "My goodness, Pearl Harbor has been attacked. All the GIs are report to MacDill right away." I said, "Okay," and eventually I got over there, but not right away. I almost decided to go to Hawaii when I enlisted, but at the last minute, when I found out 4,000 miles to the Pacific coast and then another 4, I didn't want to go, so I took mine. So I knew where Hawaii was, and I knew the range of a B-17. I told this girl, I said, "I don't think we're going to get a Jap airplane over Florida right away." And so I did get back there, but they had already had all the airplanes lined up. Oh, why they did that? They still did that even after the attack by the Japanese. And they had 30 caliber guns in it, and I'd never seen a 30 caliber gun. And they had a full load of iron bombs, and we all stood around and talked and got tired and laid on the ramp, and sometime early the next morning they called off the alert, and we all went back to the barracks. Things were kind of quiet about then. We went through our normal routine. We talked about what we knew about the attack on Pearl and Wake Island and those. And then I don't remember how long it was sort of quiet, and then it all speeded up, and we were told no more civilian clothes. You had to get rid of all your civilian accoutrements. I had a full locker full of civilian clothes, not suits, but shirts and trousers. And my biggest problem was getting rid of the automobile I bought it. I helped. That was another friend and I bought a Model A early, and I bought this one. But I didn't know what to do with this car. You couldn't give it away. The other GIs had the same problem. And I tried to, I had a little girlfriend over in Clearwater. She didn't want it. So I drove it down in front of the Pacific Finance Company somewhere in the business district and left it there with a note on the dashboard. I haven't heard anything about it to this day. But if I thought the Pacific Finance Company was still in business, I would have an attorney, we'd knock on their door. Because that car, I had there was a $300 automobile. And so I had some money in it. But then we flew from MacDill after January 1st, went to Key West, Florida, and flew patrol up and down the Atlantic coast. And we were sent up to Dayton, and they put in our airplane an ASV, Air to Surface Vessel. It was an early kind of radar. And we took probably 3 or 4 days with that. Then we came back to MacDill, and then we thought we were going to Australia. That's where we were supposed to be headed. And they loaded us up with 2 Bombay tanks, and it was going to be a long leg over there. And we hardly ever were off the ground. I think the pilots knew we weren't going to Australia. But that morning when we got up, he said, "Well, guys, we're not going to Australia. We're going down into the Caribbean." And I don't know the first island we went to there, but we dropped out the Bombay tanks and got those tin bombs in. That's what I call them. They were depth charges. And that's what we did down there a year and a half. A lot of boring, very little excitement. And we did that for a year, and one night coming into some place, I don't, might have been Ecuador. They said, hey, you're going out in the morning back to Canal Zone. You're going to be in charge of a bombing school, 6th Air Force 6 fighter, bomber command. I thought, well, maybe I'm going to take some advanced training. They misunderstood. But sure enough, when I got there, I was the enlisted man in charge. And it was a nice bombing school. I didn't know one thing about teaching anything. But I kept my mouth shut. And I didn't have to fake much, and there were some material, and I read them, and I taught theory of bombing there for 6 months. And then we came back to the States. And my crew I spent time with for a year. I finally got to see them again at Albrook Field in the Canal Zone. It was the place where we got ready to board ship. Now, I don't know whether the whole 29th was there or not. But I saw those guys, and it was a nice reunion, and we hung out together, and I saw them on board ship. And we got back to the States, and we landed at Frisco. Now we're off the base here, but
no, that's okay. This is what we want to hear too.
We took a train back to the mid-plains in Pratt, Kansas. This is interesting. We got off the train at night, just like we did here. The next morning, some of the fellows and I knew, we walked down to the flight line, and there was a hangar and a B-29 in it. And there was a guard in front of it. Webbed thing and side holes. We walked up to it, he was carrying a rifle, and he, halt. Well, I said, we're here to train in these 20, no one's allowed in here. And eventually, someone must have pulled the right bell and says, why are we keeping these things locked away from, anyway, until our men got lined out and learning to handle the electric props on the 26s, that's all they flew, that's all was there. And of course we flew with them in the back of the 26 to get flight time. You know, that 26 was a brute of an airplane. Big engine, small wings. Those wings we were flying were 2 feet short on each side from what they finally built out on them and put them in combat in Europe. You landed that airplane, they did, like a dive bomber. And then you'd flare out the last minute. Because the wing loading was such that if you didn't keep a high angle of attack and speed, you didn't fly it. It flew you, and it wasn't comfortable. We lost 2 or 3 airplanes that way there. And the first time I was sitting in the back, sandbagging for flying time, I thought we were crashing. It was a relief. We finally got rid of it. But then when we got into our 29s, they transferred us, squadron of us, I don't know, not the whole group, up to Hays, Kansas, and they finally took the electric props off and put the hydraulic props back on where they turned the pitch of the prop. They were not successful with that. Now some of the airplanes like that B-26 and others had electric variable props. They worked out very well. In fact, I read that B-26 in combat during Europe had the best survival rating of any airplane that flew for the Air Force. So it was a pretty good airplane in spite of electric props. Well, while up there at Hays, there's a little state school there. They called it a university, but it's a pretty small school. Met my wife there. I heard this woman whistling and shouting, and of course I had turned around. But I met her there, and we were finally married in June. I was an enlisted man, and they made a Bombardier enlisted men flight officers. We got the same pay as a second lieutenant. I don't know what the rank was. I had more rank as a staff sergeant, I think, but that pay was nice. And we got married in Ardmore on the 6th of June, on the day of the invasion of Europe. And I remember both things very well. One may be better than the other. And so we left there. I had a lot of points, and I got out early, and we left there and went to, this is all personal now. Any questions?
Well, let me ask you before we open that up, there's a couple things, and I know this is not something you do very often, it's all been hitting you, but there's a couple things. General Tinker, anybody familiar with that name, Clarence Tinker? All right, Tinker was the first American Indian general in the United States military. And he was an Osage Indian. He had really worked his way up. He was Hap Arnold, who was the Army Air Force commander. That was his go-to guy. When he needed something, he would call Tinker. And Tinker was an amazing guy. A lot of respect. That's why he picked him to come to MacDill and help get this worked out, because it was the first of the big bomber bases, and they wanted somebody that can go to sort this up, and MacDill was used as a model for the rest of them, how they were going to set them up. So when Tinker got here, he was a Colonel Tinker, and
Full colonel, Eagle colonel.
he was, Tom had actually flown as
Well,
Bombardier, and I'll let you tell that, but I just wanted to kind of get that going.
He was a friendly guy as a colonel. He wasn't personal in that sense, but he was a good bomber pilot. I was a good bombardier. He flew the airplane like it should be flown with his rudders. He maintained altitude accurately and airspeed, made his corrections with his tail, his rudder. He didn't use his elevators, as I may have misspoke a while ago. And he was as good a bomber pilot as they thought he was. And I like to fly with him, and I did get the opportunity to do a lot of my drops in qualifying with Colonel Tinker. He was killed later flying out of Hawaii, somewhere, one of the western battles in the Pacific. It wasn't clear out close to Japan. The B-17 didn't have legs for that, but I talked to some guys who saw him go down. He was leading the flight, and he was so concerned about doing everything so properly and correct. He was protecting himself from probably running out of gas on those long flights, and he leaned those engines out where he was pulling more air than gasoline. And they say that the guys said he was flying along at altitude, and they just slowly, well, once you choke them out, they're hard to get started again. And so he never got them started. He went straight in. And that's what the guys think who was flying. I ran into some of those fellows that were on that flight. And they think that's what happened to him. He was a good man, good pilot.
General Tinker lived right here in Palmacia, right on the edge of the golf course. The house is still there that he lived in. I had that pointed out, the house, but I haven't made it public because I didn't want people going over there and bothering him, but the house is still there.
He's a pilot. Any other pilots here? Well, I'll tell you a little bit about the first B-17s. All we had here were B-18s, and they were a good airplane, but they didn't measure to a B-17, but there's more on that. We got the first YB-17s here, and they were configured a lot different than the airplanes you saw bombing in Europe. You would know the difference. The YB-17s were not built for combat. Inside, the nose section, the radio section, were finished off like the interior of an airliner. Nice things on the floor. The ribs didn't show. They were filled with nice soft green, light green painted padding. It was quieter in them. They had high pressure oxygen system, bad for combat. They had no self-fueling tanks, also bad. They carried 30 machine guns, not all that threatening. The machine gun in the nose, you'd have to pull it out. I never did this. The sockets were there in the nose. I never saw a 30 caliber in a B-17 before Pearl, and you could pull it out and put it in another socket. And on the wall, there were little cans of ammunition. There was probably a place for 3 baby cans. Now, I don't know how many rounds of 30 calibers were in that, but they were linked in chain. And it couldn't have been a chain much longer than that. Well, you put that in a submachine gun and you hit the trigger, it's gone. So in the meantime, if you were in combat, then you had to reach up, get rid of your box, lift the top of the, I used to know what that was called, lift the top off of your 30, take that box off, put it on the wall, unhook another box, hook it here, put your machine, your bullets in, they're in the chain, put the lid down, you're ready to shoot. Totally unready. That isn't what the Europeans had learned a long time ago. But I don't know why it was so, but there were no turrets. Everything was a fixed position. And finally we got the G's. It went from, I think it was YB, B-17, B-17D, and there was something in between before the G, or was there?
Well, there was the E's.
Was there an E?
And an F model too.
Yeah.
F model. There were a few changes, and the G was the last one.
And that's one of the chin turrets.
But we were totally unprepared for war. Boy, those, and the B-18 was even less ready for war. It had a gun in the nose. It had a manually operated turret right in front of the tail, and you had to crank it up, and it was manually operated. It had 130 in it. That sticks in my mind. I don't know whether that's of great interest to you, but that's what I remember with the airplanes. And we weren't the only ones in the world unprepared for war. There were other countries too. Lincoln, I did that the same today. I'm trying to think of
Lindbergh.
Lindbergh. He came back from Germany some 10 years before the war or less and told the people in the country how poorly equipped our airplanes were and bragged about the German Messerschmitts, fighters and bombers, and he was not telling the country that there was anything wrong with us because we didn't have that development, or that he was being un-American, but they charged him with being un-American. He suffered a lot of bad publicity, but he told the truth. And we suffered during those first, a lot of you who read about aviation, you remember the stories. They lined the airplanes up in the Philippines, right? And the jobs would come by, and one swipe they got most of them. Even MacArthur wasn't ready. As much as everyone praised him for being a great general, I'm sure he was, but even he wasn't ready. It took a while, but we didn't get any training for combat here. I never fired anything. I had a pistol I had to guard the bomb site with. I never fired it. I went out to the skeet range with Major Old sometimes, and he had some of us out there, and he had to shoot skeet. And he's the only one I remember that connected it with possible combat. He'd say, that skeet's like a fighter going by. You have to learn to lead it. And it's a true story. After we were used to being with him, after a while, and he got to know us, he'd tell us, now if you miss a house, high-low house, I'm going to kick you right in the ass. And he did. I've been kicked by Major Olds. I didn't take offense. He never put a boot print on us, but we knew we'd been kicked. So it made you a little sharper. When the high and low house together was hard to get both of them. You had to, but yeah, he was a good fella, and I didn't feel like I had reason to go to the Inspector General and say, I've been abused.
Yeah.
And you bombed out here. You bombed. I know you don't remember exactly where, because that wasn't part
No,
of
I don't remember whether.
Mullet Key was one of the areas, but one of the other was they would go out and drop aluminum powder in the water.
Well, we did that on clear days out on the bay. It would spread out in a circle, and it drop. You could see where the bomb hit. They were all 100 pounds, black powder, 6 pounds, and there was something, the black powder was ignited in some way, and it carried, the B-17, even the early ones carried 20 bombs. I think that was full load, 100 pounders.
They actually had a bombing range at MacDill, called a bombing range. I'll call it a target with 3 towers, a 100-foot circle. They would triangulate where the bombs hit, and they've got a new historian, a paid official historian. You'd be glad to hear that, because he'll take on some of this stuff. And him and I talked at length today. I met him for the first time in person. So we've established one of our goals. Him and I are going to research this. We're going to find pieces of the tail of some bombs on that base from that era. If we can find one, we can put it in a display case. There won't be much left, but we'll probably be able to find that. So if it's possible, we're determined to go do that.
I've been on the bombing range sighting. There were 3 sites, and then where they met, that was where you would determine the distance from the center of the target out, and that was your...
Were you in that area when they were actually bombing?
Yeah, I
So
told
you're
you.
watching them drop the bombs.
A bomb coming down, those 100 pounders would shriek like something and rip like that. It was loud. And they made quite a shot when they hit, because you got 100 pounds of metal or sand coming down, it'd make a thud. But we all had to share a little bit of spotting out there on these bomb ranges.
To help you put it a little bit into perspective, and I hate to interject, when you tell the story, I don't have a bunch of pictures, and I keep thinking, boy, I wish I could throw this one up and show them. The dedication 75 years ago, it was real interesting. I took a picture yesterday. It was so interesting. There's one of those panoramic pictures where they take the camera and they go across, and it looks really distorted. Of all the guys standing out, and Tom was out there. We couldn't figure out which one was him, but we were looking for him in the picture, and it shows the hangar behind him. And the base hangar was not even finished yet. There were no aircraft in there. It was still under construction 75 years ago when the dedication took place. So it's interesting how all this stuff has progressed through there. And so that puts in perspective of the time he was there. The base hangar and the first 2 hangars were in use by the time 1942 when you left right after Pearl Harbor. If any of you ever get a chance, I think you can find it online. There's a Life magazine. It's like April 6th of 1942. They did a big spread on MacDill. And there's some absolutely gorgeous pictures in the Life magazine. And that was about the time that you were there and leaving, which was really interesting because some of the pictures they took, I'm going, well, there's B-24s outside the hangar door. Well, his crew was told, well, they were flying B-17s, B-18s, well, you're going to fly B-24s. Here's the manual, and they all went and sat in the plane and started, what's this? Where's the knobs? And that's how they learned to fly.
We hadn't seen a B-24. We had. Now, I flew out of Drew with the B-18s. I'll tell you an interesting story. I read a lot about this. They had a contest in Dayton, Ohio. The Air Force had this contest. It was a determining time for who was going to build the bomber for the Air Corps, the Boeing or Douglas. Douglas had a twin-engine bomber, was the B-18, very like you saw them out here. And then there was the YB-17, our first 4-engine bomber. So the B-18 didn't fly the first mission to show its capabilities and what it was designed for. The B-17 went first. The B-18 never had to compete. Someone forgot to take the tail locks off the surfaces, the ailerons and the rudders and the elevators, and the test pilot never did any of that. Why, I don't know. But he didn't get far off the ground. I speak about this like I know it, but I've read about it so much, different sources. And he cracked up that B-17. The contract went to Boeing. That's why we had all those B-18s. And Boeing was given a contract by the Air Force to build a number of B-17s, and that was the YB-17. But that was kind of sad that they put us behind here in this country, depending too much on the development of the B-18. It was nothing but a prototype of the old DC-3. I guess you call it, maybe pro comes first, but it was a development of the DC-3. It wasn't a pleasant it was a pleasant airplane, but it wasn't a combat aircraft, even less than the old YB was with their things they had that were damaging and dangerous. But the B-17G was as good an airplane as there was over Europe. A lot of people served and died in that B-17. I had nothing to do with it, but thank God. I remember we bitched and complained about stuck in the backwater of all the world problems, and we didn't think we were accomplishing anything, and we wanted so to be in combat. Thank God we never got what we wanted. We just weren't brains enough to understand that what you're winning is the end of your life. We didn't think that far ahead, but we were young and
seeing the recruiting posters and listening to the song.
I guess Uncle Sam wants you, but we were already in, but we wanted so much. We were disappointed when we didn't get to Australia. But
what we didn't do is I actually meant to everybody to introduce yourselves, and if you get any questions, think about it. Why don't we go around the room now and each I have yet to see any of that.
They told us we had to shoot it.
And where they told you that, because I always imagined the most top secret part was in the computer, and as the computer is, when you're tracking a target, and like this, it's moving, because your airplane speed isn't changing, but because of that angle, you're approaching it, different. The mechanical calculation's incredible. That's the part was top secret. And people ask me, well, why would you shoot? How would it be? Shoot that computer, because it is very, very fine mechanisms.
That the gyro was not that far from where you're dug. That instrument is only that wide, and there wouldn't be anything left if you hit that stabilizer and that gyro at that speed it was going. No, there wouldn't be anything left of it. It would be gone along with you.
My understanding is that the explosive device thing was a myth.
That's what I've come to believe and know.
I never heard of an explosive device being in the bomb site.
There appear to be two persistent myths. One is
Don't pick that up.
explosive device, and the other is that there was this one woman who supplied hair for the crosshairs.
The spider web and the whole thing.
I heard spider webs.
Yeah, I've heard all the stories.
But apparently there was a patent issued for a device that was almost like a flare gun that you would sort of between a flare gun and a blowtorch that if you had to, you could put it to the bomb site and destroy it that way. But
under the right conditions, it was the most accurate bomb site any country had. I've done this. As an instructor flying at Ardmore, we could get to 20,000 feet with the G's. 100-foot circle, 10 shots, I could hit it 4 times.
Wow.
Anytime I tried.
Amazing.
Under the right conditions. But think about flying into a combat situation. You had to determine when you would sit the airplane in an attack bomb dropping mode, which meant from the point you decide that till the bomb release, you're flying this way. You're a moving target for anti-aircraft guns and fighters. You can't deviate from that position once you go to the initial point and until you drop that bomb. Those folks knew that. We lost a lot of airplanes during that initial run. So they tried to cut down the initial run from the initial point, the less time you spent over going to that target. And as a consequence, you didn't have too many bombardiers could get the site coordinated to drop a bomb accurately.
A short amount of time.
Huh?
In that shorter amount of time.
Oh yeah, the shorter you cut down the time, the less accurate you would be. So when I was flying down in Ardmore, some of the guys would be experiencing trouble. Oh, they would make a crescent on the bubbles, and they would grab both controls to make a correction instead of the outside
Climbing
alarm.
force.
And different things, and so, well, you can't hit anything from this altitude. I said, hell, I'll show you, and I could do it. I had the time, and the weather was clear and not rough, and a good pilot who did use the ailerons. So many of those pilots who were training down there with their crews, this was the way they made their corrections. And you can't bomb from an airplane
Those of
like
you that
that.
familiar, that's what that does. You can turn left and right by rolling the plane and doing this. Well, there's some bubbles in his bomb sight. Well, if you take that, the whole thing moves and you can hit the stops. But you can also use your rudder pedals, and this is what Tinker did
you
so
had
good.
to.
And that rudder that sticks up, you don't mess with those
Yeah.
bubbles, and you can make a slight
Yeah.
correction without doing that. And that's what made a good
Yeah.
pilot as far as a Bombardier was concerned.
But it all depends on a lot of factors. If you had a strong tailwind, they discovered that with 29s with the
jet stream.
The jet stream. They went over target so fast they couldn't coordinate any bomb sight under any conditions. Boom. Their ground speed was tremendous. No, their airspeed was the same, but their ground speed, they couldn't handle it. And so they did low altitude firebombing. And that's what put them from high altitude, which they were. They didn't fly the B-29s at high altitude, as I had friends tell me. Only late in the war. All their attacks were low-level firebombing, along with that demolitions. But we had a good airplane, and our B-17s were good. The B-18 was a good airplane to fly in, but it wasn't combat ready.
Yeah,